Voter at Inside Troy on Twitter. He's our go-to guy for USC. Ryan Abraham joins us on 365 Sports, Sick of 365 Radio. Ryan, how much interest is there or activity, energy when it comes to the Jordan Addison visit to USC?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, when that name first popped up on everyone's radar a couple of weeks ago, USC, needs help at a lot of different positions. Not necessarily at wide receiver, but when a guy like that enters the portal, I mean, there were 6 first-round draft picks in the NFL from the receiver spot, and Jordan Addison won the Biletnikoff, so he's going to get a lot of attention. He has the childhood connection with Caleb Williams, USC's USC's quarterback. They played wide receiver quarterback back in the DMV, DC area growing up, so that kind of caught a lot of people's attention. I think Lincoln Riley made some news with some of the guys he was able to land in the portal. But if you get a guy like that, like a major college football award winner, definitely gets people's attention.
How do you see the team with transfers and what was left and all the thing happening coming together after spring? Because I would assume that's probably Lincoln Riley's biggest challenge is he's got a bunch of talent that's come in for sure, but can he make it all work in year one to contend for the Pac-12 title?
Yeah, I think that's the big question because he's completely remaking the roster. I mean, there's 30-something guys that are gone. He added 13 from the transfer portal before spring, and then since spring has ended, 4 more players. He talked about adding double digits after spring football, and we try to keep count of the scholarships. It looked like USC had 10 open spots, so he could potentially get there, but there's just not as big of, the names in the portal aren't as big as what maybe we thought during spring. I think the coaches out there across the country realize how important the portal is, and they're recruiting their own players better than they were before. So I don't know if there's as many impact players in there. USC's on probably 2 of the biggest ones, Jordan Addison and then Jermaine Lole, the defensive lineman from Arizona State. But, outside of that, you're getting some guys like they just picked up a JC, a Butler Community College offensive tackle that, looks good, but he's only been playing football a few years. You're probably going to get more guys like that than like proven commodities like Jordan Addison.
Ryan, obviously the 3 letters NIL have become all the rage and talk in college football these days. How would you say that USC has adapted to this new landscape so far?
Sort of like the West Coast and Pac-12. I mean, it's pretty slow, I think. USC has some big boosters, but they're not organized. So it was funny when like the Jordan Addison stuff was coming out and there was like this $3 million deal. It didn't pass the smell test for me. I think USC will get there, but they are not, they're not organized like a Tennessee or a Texas A&M or anything like that, where there's all the, organized activity going on. There's no collective at USC to this point. And even though, Lincoln Riley's a good recruiter, they've lost a player already because of NIL. So Josh Connerly, the 5-star offensive tackle from Seattle, ends up going to Oregon, and, they were able to put together a nice NIL package there. So I think USC will get there, and there's definitely some benefits being in Los Angeles, but it's more for the star player kind of thing, like a Caleb Williams, than for like a backup guard where maybe in Lincoln, Nebraska is going to get a lot of money. So I think that's where USC needs to kind of focus on. They're sort of slow to adapt to this stuff, but they have a lot of, there's a lot of advantages there, but having like a collective, putting NIL packages together just isn't one of them right now.
Addison was at UT in Austin. They put on a show, as you could imagine, wined and dined him, whatever they could possibly do. And they obviously are a logo and a blue blood. You even hear Smoak that, who knows, Alabama might get involved at some point. Right now, where do you feel like that needle is headed?
It's just from the beginning when it's sort of like the Caleb Williams thing. It just kind of made sense to end up at USC. I think the same thing applies here. Texas is definitely an attractive place, and I think it seems like his visit was good there. And obviously Alabama, you're talking about playing with the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. I mean, there's definitely some soft landing spots for Addison, but just as far as like if you're going to go 1 year somewhere, you're at Pitt, had all the success, play with your friend from childhood and Caleb Williams, and try to be part of something that Lincoln Riley's been putting together, and maybe get some big deals just because you're in Los Angeles and you're bringing some cachet because you are the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner. That's sort of where I'm pointing right now, but it's crazy. Someone could come in with some huge money and NIL, and I think that's where USC would have an advantage. And then, could he end up at Texas or Alabama? I think that's certainly possible.
How can USC not have an NIL advantage? Because, as you mentioned, they're just not they're not organized right now?
Yeah, so Caleb Williams, if he was in, if he's in Tallahassee, he's going to be the biggest name in that region, right?
Right, okay.
Here, there's LeBron James, there's Clay First, whatever you want. You name a million players. He's not in the top 25. He talked about being able to walk around in Los Angeles. He had dinner someplace, and Kim Kardashian was there with Pete Davidson. No, everyone's the paparazzi are there, but not for him. And I think that's one of the things. But he still was able to get a big Beats deal. As a star, you can make money in Los Angeles, but as college football is just not the biggest deal here. I think they will get together and have a collective and put some packages together, but right now they're just not kind of there yet. USC sort of uses its inherent advantages in other ways, like being in LA and stuff. There's some advantages to being there, but just the organization, as far as that stuff goes, they're not quite there yet.
They can host a Super Bowl, and no one even sometimes knows it's there.
They can't get Spielberg and Will Ferrell and these guys together, Ryan, and do one?
Yeah, it would be great, Snoop Dogg or whatever coming out to recruiting visits. There's a lot of stuff that they could do. When people were coming visiting and they were able to check out Super Bowl activities, stuff like that. Yeah, that's a unique thing you can do in Los Angeles. So they try to use that to their advantage. But and they have a rich alumni. There's not this. There wasn't this push to kind of get out in front of the curve and put an NIL collective together like there were in other places. You see Tennessee doing some crazy things and making a lot of progress in recruiting. I think USC will get there as it becomes more mainstream, but they weren't going to be, leading the charge for something like that.
So, Ryan, it's been a few months since Lincoln Riley just, shocked the college football world with his decision to leave Norman for L.A. What have been sort of your impressions in hearing him talk, hearing him kind of get his bearings around Los Angeles? What's kind of been your thought process in terms of how he's started his tenure so far?
Yeah, I think it's gone, really well. We weren't sure because at USC, one of the things is you want to try to get, you want to make headlines in the papers and things like that. Practices are normally open. There's usually you can talk to any player, any coach all the time. And a lot of my colleagues are like, "Wow, you have it so good there." Because if you don't allow media to come in, they'll just talk about the Dodgers or the Lakers or the Kings or whatever, something else. There's a lot of other things. It's more of a pro town than a college town. He did allow, some part of practice open. He did allow a lot of interviews, but they were a little more closed than what we've seen in the past. But I thought he was very forthcoming. We got to talk to a lot of assistants and players, things. So he sort of kind of had a little balance of where things were pretty shut down when he was at Oklahoma, and they've opened up a little bit at USC. And I think that's probably going to work where the local media can still get a lot of content out of it, and he's kind of still keeping, things close to the vest. But I think he had a good impression on everyone around here. The fans, I think, really enjoyed, the spring game. They had it on ESPN, and just being more nationally relevant is something that the fan base has been trying to do for a long time. And I think Lincoln Riley getting hired, he's been able to do that. And I think he's, saying and so far doing the right things. He hasn't won a game yet, so you got to do that. But so far, I think he's on the right track.
If, in fact, they start to win, and I'm not trying to suggest the days of when they had the great run with Leinart, Bush, and company and people like that, but USC football is about front runner, right? I mean, the fans, the stars will start to show up if they win.
100%. I mean, this is the way LA is. It's more of a, you got to win and you got to be entertaining. It's funny that the Lakers were pretty bad this year. People were still going. I went to a Laker game late in the season, but typically if the team's not winning, no matter how popular they are, people have other things that they can do, but they'll get behind the winners. And I think, when Pete Carroll made his run, the Rams weren't here, the Chargers weren't here, so they kind of became the de facto NFL team. The Rams just won the Super Bowl, so you're competing with that. Just on the street too. But I feel like if he's able to get off to a good start, and it's built up pretty well in the Pac-12. Pac-12's not great right now. They sort of have the capability of being an Alabama in a conference that doesn't have a Georgia or an LSU or a Florida or anything like that. So to me, it was always if you're screwing up at USC, it's like you're trying. You almost have to try to mess it up, and that's what they've done really for the last decade with the hires they've made and athletic directors and things like that. So it seemed to be set up pretty well for Lincoln Riley. And because of the portal and because of the transfer rules where you can get a guy and have him not sit out a year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they go 8-4, I think it's a huge improvement over last year. But if they won 10 games, I really wouldn't be shocked either. Knocking on the door to win the conference. So it's one of those things where if they start winning like that, I think people will, show up again. We've seen just our traffic and everything on our website went up about 30% just by hiring Lincoln Riley. So people wanted someone like they wanted USC to take football seriously, and by hiring Lincoln Riley, it looked like they were doing that.
Man, it's still fascinating to think about what all occurred back then with the whole move and everything like that. So it's definitely going to be a book one day. Ryan, like as you said, I mean, there's room for them to compete pretty quickly with Lincoln Riley, and you may have referred to it earlier, but if they are only 8-4, and I say only, but only 8-4, maybe they're 7-5 for some reason, why would that be in your opinion?
So I think on offense, they're going to be good again. I mean, they have the pieces at wide receiver, running back. They have a really, bringing guys back. He's brought a lot of guys back on the offensive line. There's a lot of experience there. They brought in a couple of transfers. I think the question will be on the defensive side. I think Alex Grinch has done some good things, like when he was at Washington State and had some good years. But, it's tough sometimes when you're playing a team that, you're playing with a team that scores a whole bunch of points. And that's what Lincoln Riley's offense are going to do. So I think the question is going to be on the defensive side, specifically the front seven. But they lost pretty much their entire secondary from last year, too. But they were woeful. I mean, they were just so bad. I think they were last in, points per drive or something in the Pac-12 last year allowed. It was just awful. And so if they lose some games, it'll probably be some high scoring kind of close ones. If they lose 4 or 5 games, it'll probably be because of the defensive side of the ball.
Ryan, great stuff as always. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Ryan Abraham, USC Football